And good morning. It's time for the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by Renegade River in Spring Lake. And here's your host, Mike Hewitt.
Good morning. Listen, I'm excited. We've got a really full plate today. Jim Riley is in the studio with us, but on the air we've got Ronna Romney McDaniel, who is the freshly minted chair of the Michigan State Republican Party. Madam Chair, welcome to my show.
Well, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
You've had a pretty exciting month or two, haven't you?
It's been a busy month or two. Very exciting, getting my feet wet in this new chair role, but it's been wonderful.
Is it what you thought it would be?
It's a little bit more than what I thought it would be, but it's great.
I thought that might be the case. So.
It's supposed to be, I think.
Yeah. They kind of fool you. Oh, this will be easy. You'll love it until you get in there and realize what you got. So, listen, I was very, very excited and happy to see that you won. You had a pretty aggressive campaign going on, but it's always nice when you get to see some candidates do it very, very professionally and above board and direct, and that's what you were. So I appreciate that as a Republican, but beyond that, congratulations for your victory.
Thank you, and we did run a good, solid campaign, and lots of ideas were put out there, and I was proud of the race that we ran, and I'm certainly thrilled to be in this role because we have a lot to accomplish in 2016. Most importantly, we want to take back that White House.
Yeah, I think that's the big goal. And one of the things I've really especially liked about what you've been doing after you've won, and it was one of the concerns ramping up to that election, candidly, was, as you're aware, there's a little bit of division, or has been, within the Republican Party. And I think some of my listeners know that I am chair for the 2nd District GOP, and one of the things that I think you and I are on the exact same path with is trying to bridge the divides and get all hands on deck, because I think it's going to take all hands on deck to make sure that we take back the White House, to your point.
Absolutely. We have differences of opinion, like anybody, like any family. It's good to have a dialogue. It's good to have that discussion. It makes us stronger when we hear each other's point of view. But in the end, our purpose needs to unify us. And we certainly have a purpose in 2016 to keep the House, to win the White House, to reelect our Supreme Court Justice, David Viviano, who's doing a wonderful job, to keep our congressional delegation intact, and then also to work on all of our local races so that we're recruiting great Republicans who can affect their communities, but who also will run for office in the future and be leaders in our party.
Absolutely. I can tell you, as a lesson I've learned, in fact, I talked about it very briefly at the first 2nd District meeting that I chaired. 11 years ago, I primaried Barb Vanderveen. I think you probably know Barb Vanderveen.
I do, yes, absolutely.
Who then, years later, became the chair of the 2nd District Party, and she also works for Secretary of State Ruth Johnson. And she came to me, she, of all people in the world, Barb, after I primaried her, of course, it's been a decade and life goes on, but she came to me in the late summer and asked that I consider making a run for that chair. And listen, so it caused me to really stand back and look at, frankly, my relationship with Barb Vanderveen. But it goes to one of the points that you made, the reason I'm bringing the story up, is that when I sat down and actually listened to Barb, her and I didn't agree. We didn't disagree on, I couldn't find anything that we actually disagreed on. And the difference was sitting down and listening. And so, communication has got to be the foundation, because I don't think the differences that we talk about are as grand as some folks imagine that they might be. That was my lesson from Barb Vanderveen, is that we don't have that many differences. So let's come together. So,
and the things that unite us are stronger than the things that divide us. And, one of the things I've done as chair that I promised to do when we started is communicating with our base a little bit more, talking about the great things we're doing around the state. We started a monthly newsletter sharing what our grassroots is doing. One of our counties just took a youth group to the Capitol, and what an impact that made on those 24 youth from their county to tour the Capitol, to meet our lieutenant governor, to meet our legislators, to understand the process. And those types of things make a difference in the long run. And as we share our great stories across the state, what we're doing, we're going to help encourage each other, but we're also going to come together and recognize that we have to work together. We need, like you said, all hands on deck if we're going to be successful in the future as a party.
Yeah, I'm a little bit with Ronald Reagan on this, with the 80-20 thing. If I disagree with you 20% of the time, you're not my enemy. And
Exactly.
And especially when you drill down into most of the 20% differences, most of those differences are differences in semantics. And in my view, we've got to get beyond that, because the stakes are really, really dangerously high right now. I think President Obama has done what he promised he would do. He's worked very hard to fundamentally transform America, and it hasn't been for the better on any measure, whether it's domestic, whether it's economic, whether it's foreign policy. These are things that we have got to stop fighting amongst ourselves and go stop.
Well, because Hillary Clinton's just going to be more of the same, if not worse. We look at our foreign policy and where we stand in the world today, and it's a more dangerous world with ISIS and Russia and so many of the bad actors that are gaining more strength in the world. And Hillary Clinton is responsible for that. A lot of this happened under her watch as Secretary of State, and she's going to be the nominee. And we have a story to tell here in Michigan of Republican governance, of repealing the Michigan business tax, of passing right to work, of putting Michiganders back to work and affecting families for the positive, giving them jobs, giving them an opportunity to succeed. And we can talk about what we've done versus what's happened in Washington, and we can say, you know what, this is the type of governance we need in the White House.
You know, one thing I think is very important, I guess, for us to do going forward. Let me make 2 points. First off, the media has been tripping over itself to paint her as a centrist, and to talk about the fact that, or it's not a fact, by the way, but to talk about the concept that some of the Democrat Party is not happy about her being the nominee because she's too much of a centrist. And I pause and I think, wait a minute. This is universal health care, Hillary. This is not a centrist person. And so when folks hear that kind of rhetoric on TV or on the radio, it's just that. It's rhetoric. Absolutely absurd. But one of the things, the other point I want to make is that when we went through the last presidential election, in fact, my sister, who lives in Nevada, she would call me up. She said, why isn't your side saying any of these things? Talking about getting our points across and where we stand. I think we were, in the mainstream media silences it, but people like you and I and the listeners, Jim Riley, we have got to step beyond ourselves and make sure that the electorate voters are hearing what we stand for.
Absolutely. It's harder to get our message out. We have to work a little bit harder to have our message be carried, certainly in certain avenues of the media, but we have the right message, and it's important that we stand for it and share it. And it's important that we evaluate her record, because she has a record as Secretary of State. It's worth looking at. It's not a partisan view. It's an American view to look at what she did, and certainly Benghazi, her record on Benghazi needs to be looked at. Her record as Secretary of State has not been good. And is this really the woman that we want leading our nation right now in these perilous times? And I am very confident that our party will put up a nominee that will be much better suited to lead our nation and take us on the right path.
Yeah, hi, Ronna. Jim Riley here. I've got a question. Of course, the Republicans will try to frame whomever their opponent is in a light that will reduce their voter support, and the Democrats will do the same. But a question that I have faced very, very often, and as a conservative Republican, long-timer, is what do the Republicans actually stand for? More often than not, we will hear an individual candidate make specific promises during the campaign. But in terms of the Republican Party itself, people will come to me and say, hey, Jim, we've got a state party here of Democrats. We've got a state party of Republicans. But what do the Republicans stand for? Is there a location where you can go see what the state party stands for? Or maybe you can just give us a quick, a couple of phrases of where we stand that makes us different. And by we, I mean all of us in this studio here. But where the Republicans stand for on a statewide basis as opposed to where the Democrats stand on a statewide basis.
Jim, one of the places I would absolutely direct people to go look, and I can't give you a synopsis of this in a short radio show, is our Republican website, the RNC website, and it has our platform.
Now, is that a state? Is that state or national?
That's the national party. And,
okay.
But that is what the Republican Party stands for. At our national convention in 2012, Republicans from across the country get together and they work to create a document called the platform that's voted on and affirmed by delegates from every state to represent the standards of our party. And if you read the platform, it is a wonderful document. But some of the basic things I would say is Republicans, we believe in the people. We don't want the government expanding at an ever-growing rate. We don't look at the government as a place to solve our problems. We look at the government as maybe an inhibitor. We want to have the government aid us, but not get in the way with regulations and taxation and stop the innovative American spirit from being able to build a business or have a family put more money in their pocket. And those are the types of things, and as we govern, you'll see that in action, certainly here in Michigan, when you look at getting rid of the Michigan business tax. We've grown our population. We've seen more jobs come to Michigan by getting rid of that government intrusion in our ability to innovate and be entrepreneurs and unleash the American spirit. So those are some of the things, but the platform goes through everything from foreign policy to social issues to economic issues, really where we stand as a party. It's a great framework.
I just took your advice, and I just Googled RNC, and it popped right up. And as you said, it is very detailed and frankly, very, very clear. So anybody who's interested in getting that information, just Google RNC. It's got the platform there. You can download it, or they've got neat little boxes that you can look at the individual parts. So thank you.
You're welcome.
What we've going forward? We've only got a few minutes left of the segment, Ronna. But going forward, what's do we have steps for this year to ramp up for next year, or what's the vision for? I mean, let me preface it all. When I look at the party, I'm probably a little bit different than Jim Riley on this. When I look at the Republican Party or the Democrat Party or anybody's party, I see it as a get out the vote machine. That's what I believe it is. And now that said, to that end, what's the next few steps, Ronna?
Well, I think you're correct, Mike. You know, Mitt Romney's always asked, what did you do wrong? And he said, well, I didn't get more votes than the other guy. And really, that's what it comes down to, right? We've got to get our voters out. We get them out by sharing our message, by talking about our ideals, by motivating them, encouraging, and getting them enthusiastic about what we stand for. As a state party right now, we're putting our team in place for 2016. We're writing our political plan. Soon we will be putting boots on the ground, so to speak, and helping get our message out. We are going to have a task to keep the House in a presidential year. We want to keep our majority in the House, and as I mentioned before, our congressional delegation, and of course Supreme Court Justice David Viviano. So right now in our building, we are creating that master plan and our strategy of how we're going to get that vote out and be successful.
I can tell you this from a grassroots level. One of the things that, and by the way, I'm guilty of it, so I want to preface it by that admission, but one of the things that really have always concerned me, and it's easy to get caught up in it, but when we have a primary in the Republican Party, we tend to be a little bit different than our Democratic opponents, meaning we take these primaries extremely seriously. It's not a coronation, and I think right now with the candidates we've got slowly heading towards the starting line, a couple already at the starting line, I'm really impressed with it. But what I find is that what we seem to do, not all of us, but some of us, and myself included, we'll pick our candidate, and then rather than building our candidate up, we'll do a little bit of that, but then tear down the rest of the candidates. And that's one thing that I'm really, at least in the 2nd District, going to beat the message that we have got to not do that this time. Be an advocate for your primary candidate, absolutely, but don't do it at the detriment of the rest of the team. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Well, it certainly does, and I'd say the RNC agrees with you because we've changed some of the process this cycle in terms of the debates. And last cycle, in 2012, we had 23 debates. And, you know, it's our guys beating up on each other and not talking about the Democrats. We need to talk about the Democrats. So This cycle, we're going to have 9 sanctioned debates by the RNC. We've moved our convention, our nominating convention, from August to June, or to early July, which will allow our nominee a better opportunity to share his or her vision, to get that message out across the country, and more appropriately focus on the failing policies of the Democratic Party. So we do need to support our guy, support who we want to support, get behind that person 100%, but recognize that once the contest is over, we need to get behind the nominee and support that person, because we know they're going to be better than whoever the Democrats nominate. And like you said, their primary process is not as rigorous as ours, so most likely right now that looks like it'll be Hillary Clinton.
I can't get my head around that, by the way. When I look at her, and this is not a gender thing, it's not, I'm just so tired of people looking at gender and color, skin color, and all of these things as criteria. Honest to goodness, Ronna, those things have absolutely no value to me. I'm looking for a qualified president that can steer the United States, and I don't care about the rest of it.
Well, you shouldn't, and you know that. And I'm a woman, and I'm saying this absolutely. Of course, we want to see the best person for the job. This is our country we're talking about. This is our nation. We lead the world. We do not just elect somebody based on some piece of criteria that has absolutely nothing to do with their ability to lead. And so we deserve it. We owe it to ourselves, to our future, to our children. And I'm saying this in all seriousness, to look at that person and say, who is best qualified to lead during this difficult time. And your gender or your color or your religion, no other factor should take place or take precedence over your capabilities and your resume and your ability to lead. Or
perhaps your honesty, your lifelong history of being truthful and honest and open to the public?
Those are characteristics you should be able to take into account, because it says something about your ability to lead and your integrity and how other world leaders are going to view you if they find you dishonest. How are you going to be somebody who can forge inroads in difficult areas, which we're going to need to do. So honesty, integrity, character, ability, and of course all the other qualifications that go into this all-important position that leads our country and our world. You mean
honesty and integrity, like someone say who would get rid of their server because it may have some Benghazi-related emails on it?
Yeah, I think having the home, and you know, I'm going to say something. I would think this was wrong if a Republican did this. Okay,
absolutely.
This is not a partisan issue. To have our Secretary of State doing the country's business on a home server, and then to decide I am going to just arbitrarily delete these emails when there's an investigation and they're under subpoena. This has nothing to do. This is not a partisan thing. This is not me going after a Democrat. I would say this is wrong if it were a Republican. And Democrats should be standing up and saying the same thing, because this is our national security, and she is going for the largest office in the land, and it says something about her integrity and her character. She put herself and her personal privacy above our country's security, and it's wrong.
Absolutely correct. Ronna, we're out of time for the segment, so I'll let you go, but any final words of wisdom from state party to grassroots that are listening?
Well, just some personal words. First of all, Mike, thanks for having me. I look forward to working with you. I'm very excited about this cycle and working with our party. We've got a lot to accomplish, and I think we're going to get it done.
I'm with you. And listen, as we go forward, I hope to have you back on, and I appreciate your effort and what you're doing, okay?
Thanks, Mike. You too. Bye, bye,
thank
guys.
you very much.
All right, take care.
Folks, we'll be right back.
Renegade River in Spring Lake wants to buy your used handguns and hunting guns. Renegade River, your hunting, camping, and survival store. Stop in and check out their new and used firearms, sporting goods, Army and Navy supplies, and survival gear. Downtown Spring Lake, next to the police station.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show. Now it's just Jim Riley and I. Oh boy. Listen, we do have a caller, a guest at 9:40. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a little bit of gun talk, give you a little bit of preview. But what I wanted to talk about in between now and then are just two easy little lighthearted subjects. The first is by whatever term you'd like to call it. You can call it You can call it vacation breaks, spring break, spring, whatever the heck you want to call it. But my grandkids are on Easter vacation right now.
I like that. That's an old-timey concept.
It's
Easter
a true
vacation.
concept.
Yeah.
I am so politically corrected
yes.
out with this uber left nonsense.
I like that.
I just absolutely have had enough of it. It's kind of like the thing where we all last week we heard about the baker and the pizza owner's daughter who made the comment about the gay circumstance and all that, but the media never covered the Muslim who started swearing at the guy and threw him out of the shop. The media never don't say that. I am so sick of the uber left with this political correct selective nonsense. So my grandbabies are on Easter vacation. I hope they're having a great time.
Did you happen to see the official Easter posting by the White House?
I didn't.
It is
something really insulting.
I would say it ought to be insulting. It was a picture of President Obama. It was a photograph, standing on the right with his back towards the photograph, looking out, which was set. The photograph was set so that the Washington Monument, the big tall spiral or spear up there, to his immediate left. So he's gazing at the Washington Monument. And then to the left of the Washington Monument, about the same size as President Obama, also facing the monument, was a giant person in a bunny costume. That was the official Happy Easter. They didn't really say a Happy Easter in it, but that was the official photograph that was released by the President of the United States in the White House.
Was that the spring bunny or the Easter bunny?
They didn't really say. It was offensive. And as some folks had suggested, it almost looked like perhaps a hand with the finger up, because the Washington Monument was, of course, quite a bit taller than President Obama and his buddy, the Easter Bunny. But yes, there's
could have been Harvey.
There is, nobody knows because all you saw was the back. But there, as you said, political correctness appears to be a one-way street.
It's very, very selective.
Someone is offended, by the small town pizza owner, being asked a very simple question.
Well, even the pizza owner, it was his daughter. Just over the
and honestly, and of course they were sought out because they had on their website they had some references to Christianity, and also so they were sought out, and the reporter was asking them a question expecting to get that kind of an answer. But on the other side, when Christians, as you had just said, and it's funny because in this country, the vast majority of the citizens in this country identify with a Christian religion or a Jewish religion. But when they are offended, there seems to be no outrage, no interest whatsoever, even in acknowledging the fact that, wait a minute, there are two sides to darn near every story.
It is just an amazing thing. Like the little example I gave where the guy goes in with a hidden camera, identifies himself as gay to the Muslim baker.
Very interesting video, yeah.
It was a very interesting video, but what was more interesting than the video was the lack of media response, no indignation from the gay community or their supposed leaders. None of that took place. It was just a video that was on the internet, and that was the end of the story. Now I thought, wait a minute, that was vastly more over the top than a young lady offering her opinion, which frankly was a pretty traditional opinion. No, we wouldn't do a wedding. I don't know how many weddings want pizzas. But no, we wouldn't do a wedding, but we'll serve anyone that comes into our establishment. I thought that was a fair, whether you like it or not doesn't matter. It was a fair statement. It wasn't derogatory. It was just a statement compared to the Muslim lady screaming at the guy and throwing him out. You go, wait a minute.
I agree with you.
Where is the indignation for that?
Well, there is none, and therein lies the issue, the biggest issue, and this is why shows like yours, I think, are so important, in that most folks do not have the opportunity to see the other side of the conversation, of the discussion. Matter of fact, in many cases, you only see a tiny portion. The pizza gal actually did say, of course, if anybody gay came in, we would serve them. We just wouldn't participate in their wedding ceremony. And we need shows like yours so we can get the other side of the story. And we need folks, frankly, to maybe extend a little extra effort to educate themselves. We do have a big election coming up in less than a month now. Today is the last day, by the way.
As I recall, you're a yes vote.
I am not a yes vote for this big election, which will increase taxes in the state of Michigan by $2 billion. And I think it's kind of important to understand, put it in context, because if the state's revenue is 75 quadrillion and the increase is $2 billion, well, that's kind of a drop in the hat. The state's discretionary budget is something in the neighborhood of under $30 billion. So a $2 billion increase is massive. And, of course, it's not just an increase on you and your family and your children and your friends. It is an increase on your employer. So if you are employed in town, or you have children or friends who you hope to become employed in the state of Michigan, those employers are going to suffer. And think about this. Increased taxes, $2 billion on a basis of around $30 billion. That's one of the biggest increases, probably the biggest increase in taxes in Michigan's history. Last day to register to vote is today. If you have moved or if you are not registered to vote, you can get out, go to your township, your city. I believe you can even contact the county clerk's office to get information.
You have a college degree, correct?
Yes, I do.
In your high school or your college, or maybe perhaps junior high, did somewhere in your educational travel, did they teach you about the Federalist Papers?
Yes, they did.
Did they teach you that the Federalist Papers existed, or what the Federalist Papers were for and what they said?
We actually had I had a very good class. It was in more than one.
Of course, you're talking the 1940s. So that's part
we
of
are well. Actually, this is before the Federalist Papers were actually published, so they were kind of imagining them. But no, I went to school in the 50s and the 60s.
Okay, and they did cover them.
And they did cover them
Listen,
quite well.
I posted that question on my Facebook page yesterday evening, and frankly, I'd heard it on another talk show, and the debate was on this particular show was whether the Federalist Papers or the Communist Manifesto was being taught in school. Which one? I think the person was being tongue-in-cheek about it. Did they go over the Communist Manifesto with you?
I believe it was mentioned.
Was it?
Of course, when I was in school, of course, we were engaging in duck and cover. Of course, there was very legitimate concern because there were Soviet nuclear submarines with missiles
you mean like right
aimed
now?
At the United States. Well, they were closer then than they are now.
They're in the Gulf of Mexico and on the coast of California again. Thank you, Mr. Obama.
Actually, you're right about that. They are back. Yes, they are back.
The Cold War is back. That's what happens when you do not have any kind of foreign policy whatsoever, and your enemies sense it. They're thinking, wow, the United States is off the rail. Let's put our nuclear subs back in their areas. Let's start hacking into the White House email system. Folks, we got issues. And people are saying, well, how does that mix up with the Federalist Papers? If we don't understand the kind of country that we have, we can't possibly hold it together. And I really firmly believe that. So when I'm looking at this list, I think there were roughly 30 people that responded. It looked like about half of them, maybe a hair more, were taught about the Federalist Papers. But of those folks that were taught, a fair portion of them were just aware that the Federalist Papers were, and that it was like a selling pitch that was put in the newspapers by some founders. So in other words, they didn't actually drill into it. It's a great explanation of what, and by the way, this is not a party statement, and this is how I got on the topic, by the way. I'm using this word with small r. I'm not talking political party. We have a Republican form of government by definition. That's what our government is.
We are a republic as opposed to a pure democracy.
We exactly are, because our founders said that a pure democracy was like mob rule. And they're right. But the Federalist Papers, folks, I bring it up because to me it's crucial to putting the wheels back on the cart. If
what is the education?
The education. Families should be spending time with their children or grandchildren to make sure that they understand what kind of government we operate in. I firmly believe that. If we don't teach this stuff, I'm telling you, the schools aren't anymore.
Well, there have been too many videos of asking actually college students and college graduates, and forgetting those who are simply in high school or junior high, but asking college graduates simple things like, who were the Allies in World War II? Who won the Civil War? We are finding out that our 13, 14, 15 years of government-funded free education, public school education, is in many cases of zero value at all.
What century did Abe Lincoln serve in?
What century? Yeah.
That's what they're asking, and the answer is, I don't know.
No.
They're guessing.
No. So the federal, unfortunately, what you are suggesting, which I believe is a tremendously good suggestion, that students and teachers, for that matter, understand the Federalist Papers, which are in many cases really viewed by many as being the foundation, the true foundation of what our country is all about. They've never even heard that word. They're not even getting the basics.
A lot of them haven't. But listen, there's two competing concepts in this world, at least in my view, on how best to form a government. And of course, when you look out at the many governments of the world, there are varying degrees of both of the two arguments. On one hand, I bring up the Communist Manifesto. And I bring it up because if you look at the translation for it and use the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto and do a check mark for where America is at on that list right now, folks, it's fearsome in my view. So I'm only saying that I frankly think it's good to teach your children both so that they know how to recognize when evil has got a hold of their country, which is what I consider the manifesto to be. And I think the Federalist Papers subscribe to genuine liberty for citizens. And I think whenever citizens are free, we're one step closer to a greater country. The more free we are, the better we are. The more government there is, the less free we are. It's really that simple.
Well, I don't think there's any question about it. But again, you have to have the experience. You have to have, in your case, the parents, and you were born at a time when education was viewed, the history of our country was viewed as important. I think the sad thing is, and I'd love to see maybe take the school teachers in Muskegon County. These are college graduates. They are accredited. They are, we at least are led to believe that, in fact, they understand the history of our country. How many even teachers know what you're talking about? I'd be shocked.
I got to tell you, to read it, it is not light reading. So I have to tell you up front, this is not like reading Moby Dick, where it's some novel and you can go, wow, this went fast. It's a chore to read. It really is. It's crucial to understanding the country that you live in.
You know, the Hillsdale College has done in the past, and I don't know if they're doing it right now.
Still doing it.
Okay, they are doing online classes which are free.
Free.
Which are really, really neat. And you have tests, and you have to put a little effort into it.
Listen,
but to understand the Constitution, and in particular, the Federalist Papers. You know, who wrote the Federalist Papers? Just so the people. And when did this happen? Just for folks who want a little history.
Right after our Constitutional Convention, before it was ratified by the states. It was James Madison and now I'm drawing a blank. Thanks
but the folks who did
there were three primary founders that wrote it, and James Madison, who was
Jefferson and Monroe.
Well, Jefferson wasn't directly involved in writing the Constitution. Okay. And when I look
Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, James Madison.
Yeah, and listen, a lot of folks don't even know who Jay was. No clue who he was. He was a huge figure in the founding of our country. I think, if I recall right, he was on the New York Supreme Court at one point, and then inevitably served on the United States Supreme Court. This is a founding Supreme Court justice. So I think it's huge. Folks, listen, we're going to go to a break, and we will be right back.
Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show. I am Mike Hewitt. In the studio with me still is Jim Riley.
Still, you allowed me to hang in there. Hey, it's Betty Ford's birthday.
Wow.
Assuming she was in that group of the oldest people in the world who are still living, we could wish her happy birthday in person, but
that's not the case.
She is gone. But Betty Ford, born in 1980.
1980?
1918.
I thought, well, she's not that
Thank
old.
you very much.
I'm older than her.
There we go. 1918.
Listen, on the line with us is Mark Lynn, who is with the Muskegon Pistol and Rifle Club, right?
That's correct, Mike. How are we doing today?
Very good. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Hey, one of the things I've been trying to do, in fact, I missed last week, so I'm doubling down. That's why you're here.
Okay.
Is I'm wanting to inject a few minutes every show into some gun talk. As you know, I own Renegade River, which is a gun shop. And
Yep.
actually, this whole concept come from Jim Riley. He said, "Why don't you?" And I thought, he's right, and that doesn't happen often, so I thought I better take him up on it. So tell me, what is it? What do you do? What do you do what is the Muskegon Pistol and Rifle Club?
Well, we have indoor, 50-foot indoor firing range. We've got 12 lanes there, and we'd like to kind of introduce that, reintroduce that. It's been around for 75 years. Kind of gives people an alternative to the only other indoor range we have here in town. We also have an outdoor 300-yard outdoor range. And then I'm also offering classes, basic pistol, range safety officer, the CPL or the concealed pistol license. And we'd like to get into the personal protection out of the home. And so we just kind of wanted to, broadcast that a bit and let people know who we are, where we are. We're located just north of Myers, off of Harvey Street, behind My Auto Import Center.
Okay, now you listed a handful of things. You've got classes for each of those topics. I think you had concealed carry. Do you have like a beginner's class, Mark? Are you working on that, or?
I do. No, I do some basic first steps.
Okay.
And I will do one-on-one firearm training with individuals. I have done that in the past. It works out very well.
Listen, I think that's huge, Mark, because over the last few years, as for lack of better words, a more libertarian swing has met us, at least on this topic. Being able to carry a gun has gotten easier, and a lot more people have entered into that. I don't know Muskegon's numbers, but I know when I last saw Ottawa County, they had 12,000 concealed carry licenses issued. Now, that doesn't mean that many people carry, but that's how many licenses have been issued.
Almost 500,000 CPLs have been issued in the state of Michigan, Mike.
500,000, so half a million. And listen, I'm a huge gun advocate. I own a gun shop, but I also have. In fact, you've probably heard the spiel from me. I've also got 4 daughters and 9 grandkids, so I'm a huge safety advocate. And the things that scare me, along with maybe the folks that don't like guns, is I want to make sure that the folks that have access to guns are really well trained. And I think it starts with beginner. On occasion, I'll see someone that I'm thinking, really, really, really go to a beginner class before you start carrying. Do you agree with me on that?
100%. And in fact, we get some of the folks in that are totally afraid of firearms. But once you dispel some of the myths and realize that guns are not evil, the proper training and use of a firearm, it can be a very fun, rewarding sport, as a matter of fact.
Really is. Beyond personal protection, it really is a great sport. And one of the things that, in fact, it was part of the reason that we started doing gun talk here on the show for a few minutes every week, is that I did a then and now episode a while back, and one of the pictures I found from 1955 was 3 kids standing in a classroom, and it was during rifle class, and they were being instructed on the safety of a rifle, and they were maybe, 9 or 10 years old, and that, of course, we don't do that anymore. Now you can't eat your Pop-Tart down to the shape of a pistol without getting, thrown out on your ear. And the problem with that is the lack of knowledge is what makes things, and I don't care whether we're talking about guns or power drills or cars, the lack of training is what makes these items dangerous. And so I think we were on the right path when they did training, the wrong path when we don't now, and we make it the uber left and society in general are trying to make it this dangerous commodity. Oh, be careful. When all you need is a little training and a lot of respect.
That's correct. If you think about it, Mike, your hands can be lethal weapons.
Yep. So can my toaster I talked about. If you're trying to hurt somebody, you go to did I say Soviet Union? You go to Russia where the gun laws are extremely, outrageously harsh, and yet they've got a murder rate 5 times that of the United States. So maybe it isn't guns; it's people and culture.
Yeah, you can make anything a taboo.
Yep.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do here in the U.S. But like I said, with some basic training and and a good eye for safety and a good attitude towards safety, guns are, like I said, a very very fun and rewarding pastime hobby.
Now, Mark, you're licensed. Is that right? You're licensed
That's
in
correct.
each one of these things that you do.
Each one of these disciplines, I'm certified through the National Rifle Association. That's correct, Mike.
Okay, now so I know a little bit about that. Not a lot, by the way. So I'm not being funny about it. Some of those courses are pretty intense, multi-day courses. So it's not like you took it online and now you're certified.
That's correct. Most of the, aside from the, I shouldn't say aside, but most of the NRA, once you get above the CPL level, the NRA is figuring on that you're pretty serious into, being a good advocate for gun safety and knowledge. So yeah, there are we call KSAs, knowledge, skills, and attitudes, and there's all kinds of different subcategories or different things. And yes, it is a pretty intense. Most of my courses, the RSO class itself is 9 hours in length. You start getting into what we call POF, personal protection out of the home. You're looking at a 2-day course, about 250 rounds. So yeah, at each level you go to, it's quite a bit more intense.
Now, the one that you had just mentioned, this personal protection out of the home, is that for the instructors or is that for the folks who are interested in learning personal protection themselves?
That is for students. That's for the student portion. You come attend the class, you will get that instruction as a student. If there's further interest in becoming an instructor for that, we do have certification for that as well.
I speak with lots and lots of folks because I'm a relatively new gun owner who really don't know the difference between a revolver and a semi-automatic or an automatic, as they're quite often called. They would like to have the ability for personal protection for themselves, their family, maybe even their businesses, but they're really at the lowest level. What kind of classes do you have for that person who would like to own a gun, would like to maybe get some, obviously you can go to a gun shop and you can get some education as to what the guns are, but you really want some hands-on, how do I load it, how do I hold it, how do I shoot it, how do I clean it?
That's correct. That's a very good question. I do a lot of times, we'll do one-on-one, or I'll do a small group, maybe 3 or 4 people, kind of go through even single action, double action revolvers. This is what it is. This is what it looks like. This is how you how you aim it, how you shoot it, how you clean it, how you care for it. Then we can step right into the next realm of the semi-automatic handguns as well. Kind of the same premise. This is how it's held. This is what it does. This is all the components. This is what makes it up. And you know what? Getting the firearm in somebody's hands is the most, and I think Mike can agree with this, is the most important thing. You go to a gun shop. Hey, what kind of a gun? I want a Glock. Why do you want a Glock? Well, because everybody says that I want a Glock. Well, you know what? The Springfield or the Ruger may fit your hand better. It may be more comfortable. And then you start getting the caliber. I mean, a 22 caliber will do some great damage and be just as lethal as a 45.
Mark, I'm laughing while you're telling that because I'm thinking of the 5 billion times I've had someone come in and say, I'm looking for my wife a handgun. I say, great, when can she be here?
Exactly.
It's like picking out somebody else's underwear. And
exactly.
It's people that are not gun familiar might be rolling their eyes as they're driving down the road, but listen now, it's truly, if you're not comfortable with it, don't carry it.
Correct. It's more dangerous to be carrying a lethal weapon.
Yep. And some of them will come in and get these little dinky, teeny, weeny things. And of course, to me, when I look at the firearms, I look at it like we're at Ace Hardware and we're picking out tools. They're just tools to me. And each one of them do a slightly different thing. So I'll say, hey, let's slow down for a minute. If you're going to carry, please practice first. And the reality of these little dinky guns is that they're not fun to shoot. So I know you're not going to practice. So let's look at some guns that you'll actually shoot with.
And keep in mind, too, Mike, you start getting into the striker-fired firearms.
Right.
If you don't have a good hold on that firearm, The slides can come back, and you can actually take chunks of your thumb out of them. I mean, it's a safety issue as well.
Little viper bite.
That's it.
That's what it looks like.
Well, this is why it's so important, and I really looking forward to folks giving you a call and finding out those first steps, because it's not rocket science, but it isn't just like you had suggested. A husband going in and buying his wife a gun and handing her the gun. And I think that most, certainly the folks who really care about being responsible gun owners, in many cases, they certainly care, but they may not be aware of what's necessary.
Correct. Well, and there are some, believe it or not, contrary to popular belief, I believe, there are some prerequisites for that CPL class. One of which that you should either take the basic or the basic first steps or basic pistol and be very familiar with the shooting and the operation of that firearm. And I think we're missing that component of that training.
I think you're exactly right. But for me, it's like I said a little bit ago, it goes back to some of these really simple, real basic things used to be covered in school, and they're not.
Correct.
In fact, they're avoided to it. It's almost like schools trying to purposely cause people to be ignorant in this area.
Correct.
And it's just too dangerous of an area to be ignorant in. Even if a person doesn't want to be a gun person, that's okay. But at some point in their life, they're probably going to come in contact with one. It'd be nice to have some really basic training for everybody. That's how I see it.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Mike. Ignorance can sometimes be the worst, your worst enemy.
Yeah, ignorance is really not bliss when it comes to firearms.
Hey, just a quick question:
correct.
if you're interested in getting let's say a pistol, although perhaps the first gun really ought to be a long gun, but let's say you're interested in getting a pistol purely for home protection. What's it ballpark going to cost you?
I hate to say that. I hate to put a price bracket.
Is it $10,000 or is it $50 or is it someplace in between?
No, I would say we're between $500 and $1,000.
Okay.
And Mike could probably agree with me on this. To go into a gun shop and say I want the cheapest possible gun that I can find, regardless of how it fits or your comfort level with it or anything else.
Yeah,
that's probably the wrong approach.
Mark, let me stop you for a second. You're going in and out, so if I could get you to stay constant for just the last 1 minute of the show.
Sure.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Sometimes cheaper is not really wise, and sometimes expensive is just an absolute waste of money. Mark, we've got 30 seconds or so. Do me a favor. Tell me how folks can get a hold of you if they want to attend one of your different classes.
They can call me direct, Mike. Area code is 231-578-8883. That is probably the best way to get a hold of me.
Have you got an email address?
I do. It's mlynn@emiliaair.com.
Okay, all right. Then if they want to join the Muskegon Pistol and Rifle Club, what's that cost them?
$60 per year.
$60 per year?
Correct.
Wow, I shoot my backyard, but I might go ahead and join because that's so darn cheap.
And that's the only second indoor range we have here in town.
Well, listen, Mark Lynn, we're out of time, but I appreciate you coming on, and we're going to have you back. And next time we get you, let's have you right in the studio with us.
That sounds good, Mike. I appreciate you having me.
Great, folks. We'll see you next Wednesday. Have a great week.
Renegade River in Spring Lake wants to buy your used handguns and hunting guns. Renegade River, your hunting, camping, and survival store. Stop in and check out their new and used firearms, sporting goods, Army and Navy supplies, and survival gear. Downtown Spring Lake, next to the police station.